It's 5.0 already. I got no idea what changes there are. Let's see. Okay, what about the live stream? 2 hours? That's way too long. Um, okay, 20 minutes? That's not too bad, but we can do better than that. Oh yeah, the Instagram meme. Now this is what I like.
Let's be financially responsible! I can't stop winning! 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 I can't stop winning!
Now that I'm 102% caught up, it seems we really can't stop winning, huh? But while we've been on a winning streak in regards to changes, there is still one area that's been neglected. I don't see any mention of the Spiral Abyss. When was the last time we even got a sizable gameplay change anyway? Let's see, 3.8. We adjusted the collision size of the Spiral Abyss floor. Nothing. We have gotten absolutely nothing. It's been the same since 2020, all the way back during the pandemic era. The only thing that ever changes is the lineup and the blessings that we get. And if that's not outdated, I don't know what is. Like, I guess if it wasn't broken, then it wouldn't need any changes, but clearly a lot of people are unhappy. Hello, I'm Yu, and I'm here to talk about how I'd personally fix the spiral abuse. But before we understand how to fix something, we need to know what it is. So, what is the Spiral Abyss? I know we got a lot of veterans here, but hey, we need context, just in case for the people who don't know. But for the veterans out there, skip to this timestamp on the screen, because this part might be a bit boring. The Spiral Abyss is a dungeon-like challenge which is separated into two parts. We have the Abyss Corridor, which includes the first 8 floors, and then the Abyssal Moonspire, which is floors 9 to 12. Most players, after they've played for a while, probably have not touched the lower levels in months, or even years. Because like, seriously, when's the last time you actually went to the lower levels? Because for me, it's been like a solid 2 years. Okay, anyways, when people are talking about the Spiral Abyss, they most likely are referring to floors 9 to 12. This is considered Genshin's Endgame mode, which is a time trial in which you need to defeat the enemies within a set time to get the full rewards. This mode is reset in phases called our waning and waxing phases, which is reset every month. This used to be every half month, but because of the Imaginarium Theater, it's now once a month. These phases not only refresh the rewards we can obtain, but also the current blessings, which is generally tailored toward the unit that's out during the time. But TLDR, we go to the Abyss, kill stuff, get rewards, and leave. Okay, so now that we know what it literally is, let's answer why is an endgame mode important and what makes a good one? The clear-cut answer is that endgame modes are important as they are a way to keep dedicated players invested into the game, as it provides them a challenge and something to do. So, what makes a good endgame in my eyes? Well, it comes down to 3 main things. 1. Endgame should generally test investment, because after farming for artifacts and leveling your characters, well, you'll need a place to test them out. You want to feel rewarded for investing time and or money into this game. Imagine you spend weeks leveling your favorite DPS to 90 and talents to 10. Well, the Spiral Abyss should be the place to go to see your hard work pay off. But then you casually just delete everything and well dang, not only was that not too fun, it also leaves you wanting a harder difficulty to test your limits, but you know that won't happen. On the other side of the spectrum, if it's too difficult, then a lot of players will enjoy it as either skill and knowledge generally can't make up for the lack of investment. 2. Endgame should test your skills, whether it's your positioning, dodging, or how well you can do your rotations. The final challenge shouldn't be an absolute cakewalk where literally any player could do it, cause then at that point there is no sense of accomplishment. And if you can just use overpowered units and turn off your brain while brute forcing the content, well then it diminishes the value of your skill. And lastly, I think it should test your knowledge on the game, whether it's the mechanics, the enemies and their weaknesses, and your team. Just like any test, if you know the answers, then you should be rewarded for answering or playing correctly, like bringing Hydra units to counter a pyro-heavy side. Though there could be other factors which you may believe constitutes a good endgame mode, I personally believe a well-rounded endgame mode like the Spiral Abyss should ideally test these 3 aspects. But when we look at Genshin, realistically speaking, the Abyss currently leans too heavy on investment. Even if you are a god at the game and know the ins and outs, if you don't have the right characters and proper investment, you literally cannot beat it. This makes it less accessible and rewarding for players who are good at the game or knowledgeable but simply don't have the right artifacts, units, or investment. While some people may view this as fine, I personally believe that it's just too restrictive for a big majority of the population. As such, a big chunk of the player base don't even play one of the arguably most important modes in Genshin. This isn't the endgame mode for just some dedicated players, it's the endgame mode for all players, yet most of our players can't or just don't do it. Speaking of the player base, let's talk about what type of players there are in regards to investment. I don't have any data to prove this, nor do I know exactly how the distribution is, and as such, I won't provide any numbers, but I did make this chart and made it as accurate as I could from what I've read and just my gut feeling. Well, using my bell curve chart, I've divided the player base into 5 groups based on their investment and not time played. Knowing how a bell curve works, a big majority of our players should lie on the casual to low/mid invest players, while only a few percent of the population could be considered veteran, dolphin, or let alone a whale. This will be used later, but for now, just keep this and the fact that most players don't even try the Spiral Abyss in mind. Now that we have an idea of the player pool, let me further classify the types of players that would play the Spiral Abyss before talking about its difficulty, issues, and solution. So what is this mode in the eyes of the players? I personally believe that there are 2 main groups that would tackle this mode. First, Camp A. We have our players who just see it as a place to get primo gems, players who just come there for the rewards. Of course, most players want rewards, as I'm no different, because I mean, who doesn't? But while this could be anybody at any investment level, I do believe our casual players who play this game generally fall into this demographic. I believe the mentality is that if they can snag some rewards, great, and if not, then oh well.
A win is a win. A win is a win. I don't care what y'all say, a win is a win.
But for others, for people in Camp B, this is a place to test yourself and your teams. It tests how well you have invested in and built your characters, how well you know your team's rotations and mechanics of the game, and it tests your positioning and understanding of the enemies to potentially abuse your weaknesses. These people want to have pride when it comes to their units and teams, which can be demonstrated by them getting 36 stars in the Abyss, and for those who want to take it one further, clearing as fast as they can. So listening to everything so far, why does any of this even matter? Why does the Spiral Abyss matter if it only really affects a small portion of the player base? It is just an optional thing anyways, you aren't forced to do it, nor does it impact progression in the story. Well, I want to say it's because of game design, where everybody should tackle the Abyss as all things lead to the Spiral Abyss. As such, this mode that people concurrently play, will play, or have at least attempted should be good as to keep the players coming back for more. But what do I mean that all things lead to the Abyss? Well, Genshin naturally leads you to doing the Abyss indirectly. But how do they do it? Well, it's because of resin. Resin naturally builds up over time, and we as players wouldn't want to waste such a precious resource. So we hop on and use our resin as to not waste any. And now, even more so due to the fact that using our resin counts towards our dailies. But what does resin get you? Well, it can get you artifacts, character and weapon essential materials, and talent books. All of these make our characters stronger, and over time, this naturally leads to build characters. Like, seriously, if resin didn't exist, most casual players would just do their dailies for primo gems and then dip. Like, why build your characters to level 90 with perfect artifacts if you could just use level 70 characters and get the same results in the story and exploration? But after naturally using your resin, you then have cool and built characters. Well, 1, you now gotta see how awesome and strong they are, right? And there's a mode where you can test that and get rewarded for it too, called the Spiral Abyss. 2, if you can do the Spiral Abyss for the extra primo gems, it'd be such a waste to not collect the rewards, wouldn't it? Especially if you spent so long in the artifact mines. Game design wise, it's actually pretty smart, as the potentially wasted primo gems and resin from you not completing dailies and using your resin is enough to get people coming back. And don't get me started on artifacts, because I personally keep coming back for the chance of a 54 CV piece, and it gets me every damn time. What I'm trying to say is that players in this game should naturally get better at the game and get stronger character as times progress. And as such, it'll just be in our nature to test ourselves and our characters, plus we get rewarded for it too. Okay, now that we know a bit more about the Spiral Abyss and why it's important, a bit about the player base, and how the game naturally pushes you to play the Spiral Abyss, Let's talk about the difficulty, as this is a core reason why many players are not satisfied with the Spiral Abyss right now. So where do I personally believe the difficulty of the Spiral Abyss is right now? Well, first let's go back to my chart. This of course depends on your skill and investment level, but I believe that low to mid investment players generally can attempt or beat Spiral Abyss 11 with varying amount of stars. Mid investment players might manage to clear Abyss 12, again with varying levels of success. Getting all 12 stars has gotten a lot harder, and it often requires either a really skilled player or an account that's really well invested, potentially even reaching the dolphin territory. I'm pretty sure you can spot the issue by now, but as you can see from my chart, we're missing a big chunk of the player base. A significant portion of our casual players don't even attempt the later floors of the Abyss. For many, it's just too difficult to bother with the rewards, and that's not even considering the fact that some casual players simply don't care about the Abyss at all for whatever reason. If we look at this chart of the past Abysses and their HP pool, we can see a steady increase in enemy HP to match the trend of stronger units being released, but also the improvement of players and their artifacts. This, while being a normal trend in any game, of course would also increase the barrier of entry to said mode. For the veterans and dolphins, it still may or may not be challenging enough for them, and definitely not for you whales out there. Regardless, players across the spectrum of investment are fairly unhappy when it comes to the Abyss. But to summarize, this endgame mode does not do a good job of catering to its players, as it's a one-size-fits-all type of mode. But as we know, players are at all sorts of different investment levels, ranging from Geo Bishop hatchlings to Age-to-Hut-sized ones. Endgame content should be challenging, but it shouldn't be only for the top 1, 5, or 10% of players, especially when it doesn't even do a good job catering to them either. So what is causing this issue to exist? Well, the issue for Hoyo, as you can tell, is determining which player base to cater towards. Should this game mode be made for casual players in mind, which make up a majority of the population, the diehard sweats, or maybe the people in between? How does Hoyo choose which demographic to balance around without leaving the others dissatisfied? The truth is, they can't, because their one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work for this mode. Like, imagine Hoyo said, guys, we're nerfing the Abyss to cater towards the new and casual players. A lot of the veterans and whales probably would be very vocal towards a change like this, so clearly we can't do that. Helping one population will, in turn, harm another. What makes this decision harder for Hoyo is the fact that investment varies so widely, especially in a gacha game like Genshin. The gap in investment can be enormous with constellations, weapons, and even artifacts. This endgame also could be balanced by money, but that's clearly not how players would want the endgame to be balanced around, as nobody wants a pay-to-win mode. But for Hoyo to make money, they clearly need to up the difficulty to incentivize people to pull newer, stronger characters. Before I give you my solution, let me go over a common solution I've heard and why I don't believe it's the way to go. The first would be the addition of floor 13 or even 14. Just like any other floor, we have different enemies and higher levels. But simply put, this wouldn't change the barrier of entry to the Spiral Abyss, with the newer and less invested players being still unable to do the Abyss. But while it can cater better towards the higher investment players, it also pushed the requirement to be able to beat the higher Abyss higher, with the mid-investment players now being unlikely to claim any of these rewards. This is also no different than drastically increasing the difficulty of the enemies and bosses to the level of the 3.2 event Hypostasis mode or the 4.6 Saurian Search event, where the bosses could one or two-shot you. Hoyo could totally just say frick you and make this Spiral Abyss an absolute nightmare. Let's just watch this clip real quick. Can we just admire how the C6 player is all buffed up and hitting like a goddamn truck? Now imagine if they put this boss on floor 12. Like, I'm good, I like hard stuff, but not that hard, you know? We are at the mercy of Hoyo, and I don't want stupidly hard bosses like that. Finally, we arrive at my solution, which has multiple parts. If you've been paying attention, you might already guess where I'm going with this. First, let's remove floors 9 and 10, and only keep our current floors 11 and 12. Why? Well, my reasoning is that floors 9 and 10 just suck. Floors 9 and 10 are generally not engaging and feel like a waste of time for players who regularly do the Spiral Abyss. Every time the Abyss resets, it's the same thing with slightly different enemies. By removing these floors, we save players time and let them focus on what they actually want to do. But what about the rewards from floors 9 and 10? Well, we can redistribute those rewards into floors 11 and 12. However, now that the rewards are tied to the difficulty of floors 11 and 12, doesn't that raise the barrier of entry even higher, further excluding casual and lower invested players? Yes, but this is where the next part of the solution comes in. We split the Abyss into different difficulties, each offering different amounts of rewards. Essentially, we keep the same enemies, but with different levels and scaling. And guess what? This concept is already in the game when we look at most combat events with the difficulty slider. Introducing a lower level versions of floor 11 and 12 would achieve a few things. First, it would lower the barrier of entry to players trying the Spiral Abyss, allowing lower invested players to get a taste of what Endgame is like and what they could potentially work towards. This reduction in investment requirements would let players who have never earned any rewards at least get some, or maybe even half, of what's currently available from 36 starring the Abyss. Lowering the enemy levels also allowed these players to experience what super geared out players face, just at a different level. Additionally, this lower difficulty mode allows players to experiment with lower level characters. You can now use those level 70 characters with level 6 talents, characters that would normally stand no chance in the current Abyss 12. This gives players a chance to test them in a similar endgame environment and lets them see if they fit with their current team, potentially even liking them enough to warrant investing more resources. Of course, we would have our current Abyss 11 and 12 difficulty, which would give the full rewards. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, add the protocol system from Diverging Universe from Honkai Star Rail, which simply amps up the enemies and the bosses. These harder difficulties should not give any rewards, or if they do, something just for bragging rights like a badge or something, as to not make players feel like they're missing out on rewards. This will cater towards our higher investment players such as the dolphins and whales by giving them a new playground to use and test their units, which they've spent a lot of time and money on. Like, I want to see a C6R5 investment mode. Rather than watching people compete in the Olympics, which is our current Abyss 12, I want to watch the enhanced games where everybody is like steroid the heck up. I want to see how crazy speedrunners can get and what crazy shenanigans can be done. I honestly believe what I mentioned would fix the Abyss for most players, as it should now cover a wide variety of investment levels, but it still might not be appealing enough for some. So how do we add that little flair, that incentive to play the Abyss? Well, we'll give free 5-star units to try in there. Ideally the new character, but maybe reruns too. Let players get a feel of the new character or just one they haven't played with yet. And let us customize these given characters so we can use our own artifacts and weapons to see how our version of the character would perform. For their level and talents, just give them the average of the team. This would do a few things. 1. This allows people to see if they would actually like a unit or not, and whether they fit into their teams. As such, they don't end up regretting pulling a character. 2. This lets people potentially who would have never used a character to try them and maybe like them enough to consider pulling for, increasing your revenue, Hoyo, just saying. But this does call into question how this may potentially hurt Hoyo's revenue, as players can just use the new character which the Abyss is generally catered towards and never pull them. My counterpoint is that a cooler and more inclusive endgame experience could attract more players, which could offset any short-term revenue loss by expanding the overall player base. And remember, you don't get to keep these characters, they're just trial characters, so if you want to use them elsewhere, you still gotta pull them. Now that that's out the way, what are some other things I'd like to see? Well, 1. Community trials or an Abyss where players can make their own rules and floors would be super cool. This could just be changing the enemy lineup or placement, but could also be like limiting constellations and refinements, or leveling everybody to a set level. This would allow more community events where players can compete with each other using a set standard, rather than limiting themselves because we can't currently turn off constellations. And Hoyo, you're not sneaky. I saw what you put in that survey, asking us if we've built levels before and if we like doing it. I assume this is referring to the Divine Ingenuity mode where we could share our own domains that we made. Come on, we want it. Clearly you're thinking about it. Just do it, Oyo. You could just make this a permanent mode if it's not going to be the Abyss. This will let players and their friends do goofy stuff with each other and also allow content creators to interact more with their fans. Seriously, a permanent Mario Maker-esque mode could add so much replayability into the game, unless you just want to let us make our own abysses. That's pretty cool too. And lastly, whether you bring the domain maker thingy back again, or put this in a new mode, I don't really care. Regardless, one thing I really want is put multiplayer in the Abyss. Multiplayer isn't too common nowadays and it's just people asking each other to yoink their resources, but let players interact more with each other. I want to test my characters with my friends and see how hard we can clap the Abyss. You don't need to give rewards for this, or maybe like half rewards if you beat it this way, but like adding this would just be so cool as well. We've already seen this during some of the other boss events, so like, you know, just do it again. As a lower level player, it would be pretty cool and useful for higher level players to come on the world to help them out with the Abyss. And as a higher level player, visiting lower level worlds to help them out is just like reminiscent of the good old days when, you know, higher level players will visit lower level players. And making a mode like this multiplayer, it could help the community to get together and help each other out, which would be cool. And that's that. It was a pretty long video, so thank you for making it this far. Feel free to discuss or question what I said in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. But while talking to each other in the comments, please be courteous and not a dick. It's good to hear people from all different perspectives and investment levels. And who knows, maybe you'll learn a thing or two. My next video will be about Shilonen and how strong she currently is, plus the various things you can probably do with her and the team she fits in. She definitely looks pretty wallet worthy, I must say. But besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed Notlin, because I certainly am, because I haven't done the story yet too, so no spoilers in the comments please. Thank you again for watching, and